There's a specific kind of apocalypse that doesn't need monsters. No zombies, no aliens, no infected sprinting at you down a highway. The Road is the kind of movie that gets inside your head and doesn't leave. Not because it's violent, though it is. Not because it's heartbreaking, though it will wreck you. But because every single horror in it starts from the simplest possible premise. What if everything just stopped? In this video, you're going to understand why that scenario isn't just a nightmare, it's a blueprint. And you're going to understand why almost nobody watching this right now would have any real shot at surviving it. Here's what we're going to cover. The world of The Road isn't what you think it is. We're going to talk about what the collapse actually looks like and why your survival plan falls apart before day 3. We're going to talk about the bunker, why finding one might actually kill you faster. And we're going to talk about the real threat. Not starvation, not the cold, but the other people left alive. By the end of this, you're going to look at your pantry, your neighborhood, your relationships, and see them completely differently. Let's go. The first thing you need to understand about this world is that it's not in chaos. The chaos was years ago. The chaos was when people were still fighting over the last cases of water at Walmart, when organized gangs were hitting Costco's and Sam's Clubs and stripping them bare in 48 hours, when you could still turn on the emergency alert system and hear something, even if it was just a FEMA broadcast telling you to shelter in place, which you knew by day 5 was a lie. That was the first phase. And in the first phase, you probably told yourself, okay, I'd make it. I'd bug out. I'd head to my cousin's place in rural Tennessee. I've got half a tank of gas and a case of MREs in the garage. But that was before. What's left now is worse than chaos. What's left is exhaustion. Everything that could be looted has been looted. Every Bass Pro Shops, every gun store, every prepper's bunker that someone else found first, stripped. Every highway lined with cars that ran out of gas, never moved again, and are now just landmarks of the first week when people still thought they were driving toward something. The cities? Gone. Not bombed out gone. Slowly consumed gone. I was picked apart over months by desperate people trying to survive one more day. Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit. It doesn't matter which one. The template is the same, and those people, most of them are dead. What's left are the ones who found a way to keep going. And not all of them found a way you'd want to meet on a dark road. You've thought about it? Everybody has. If the world ended, I'd go rural. Get out of the city. Grow my own food, live off the land. Here's the problem. The ash layer in the atmosphere, whatever event caused this collapse, has reduced sunlight to the point where photosynthesis barely functions. The seeds you've been romantically imagining planting in some Georgia field, they won't germinate efficiently, and even if they did, the soil is compromised. Rain carries particulates from a poisoned sky. Temperatures have shifted into patterns that no crop rotation in American agricultural history was designed for. There is no hunting. The wildlife died off or fled years before you got there. Fishing? The rivers and lakes are dead or nearly dead. There is only what already existed before. Canned food forgotten in the back of a rural farmhouse pantry. Processed food sealed in a gas station storage room that nobody thought to check. Military MRIs left in a National Guard depot that somehow got overlooked. And all of it is running out. Not theoretically, not someday. Running out measurably. Week by week, mile by mile. Think about that for a second. This isn't about finding the right food source. This is an arithmetic race you are already losing. Every day there is less food in the world. Every day more mouths competing for whatever remains. Every day the distances you have to walk to find anything get longer. And you're doing this on foot, in the cold, with a kid who depends entirely on you. The father in this film has been on that road for years, and that matters because you need to understand what years in that scenario does to a human being. He doesn't sleep, not really. He sleeps with one eye open because at any moment someone could come out of the dark. He doesn't eat. He eats enough to not collapse, always giving the boy the better portion. He has a cough that gets worse every week. The kind of cough you hear in the film and immediately understand. That's not a cold. He's dying. Not dramatically, slowly, biologically, inevitably. Human lungs weren't built to breathe ash permanently. A human body cannot operate at this level of chronic malnutrition without beginning to shut down, organ by organ. The immune system does not survive years of extreme stress without eventually giving out. And he keeps going. Could you? I'm not asking if you're tough. I'm asking something more specific. Do you have the capacity to keep functioning when your brain has run out of reasons to? Before the film even starts, the mother made a calculation. She looked at the world, ran the numbers, and decided it wasn't worth it. A lot of people watching this film judge her for that. I'd argue she's the most rational person in the entire story. The man keeps moving for one reason and one reason only: the boy. Now put yourself on that road with them. Imagine waking up on day one. Not cold like a rough winter night in Minnesota cold. Cold like sleeping outside with no insulation, no heat source, in clothes that have been washed so many times in creek water they've stopped doing much of anything. A cold that accumulates overnight, that settles into your joints, that you cannot escape because there is nowhere to go that is warmer. You are not a prepper who planned for this. You are not a Navy SEAL. You are whoever you are right now. With the fitness level you have right now, the mental health you have right now, the pain tolerance you have right now. Day one. What do? Then the bunker appears. This is the moment in the film where both of them exhale for the first time, a hidden hatch, a ladder going down, and then light, warmth, shelves stacked with canned food, clean clothes, water, a bed, and you're watching this thinking, okay, survival solved. No, the bunker is a poisoned gift, and the man knows it immediately. Problem one, it's not his. It belonged to someone. It might still belong to someone. Any location with resources like that is a target. If he found it, others can find it at any moment. While he's sleeping. While he's finally letting his guard down for the first time in months. Think about this in American terms. Imagine finding a fully stocked National Guard supply cache in rural Appalachia. Would you sleep easy? Or would every sound outside have you reaching for the Glock you found in the county sheriff's cruiser on the interstate? Problem two, staying still is dying. Counterintuitive, but real. The world is getting colder. The permanent winter is deepening. Roving groups move through territory unpredictably. A fixed location means eventually being found by someone you cannot negotiate with. Problem three, the cruelest one. The bunker will run out. It doesn't matter how much is down there. It is finite. And when it's gone, you go back to the road. But now you're slower because your body got used to warmth and regular calories. You're carrying what you can't fully transport. You're more psychologically destroyed by leaving comfort behind than you were before you ever found it. The man takes what fits in the cart and climbs back out. Because he understands that place was never a destination. It was a pause. But let's talk about what would actually kill you. Not hunger, not hypothermia, not exposure. The other people who survived. The Road is a film about what scarcity does to human beings. And what it does is simple. It destroys the social contract. Not partially. Completely. In a world with enough resources, cooperation makes sense. You help me, I help you, we both go further than we would alone. That's the fundamental logic of civilization. It's why you hold the door for strangers. It's why your neighbor brought you food when you were sick. It's why this works. But when there isn't enough for everyone, when there is no guaranteed tomorrow for anybody, the logic flips. And what happens in that flip is what the film calls the bad guys. Groups that found a solution to the protein problem. A solution that works. A solution that is absolutely monstrous and at the same time follows a cold, horrible logic given the context. Cannibals. People who decided that the only reliable remaining protein source is us. When you see the cannibal group for the first time in the film, the camera doesn't treat it like a conventional horror moment. There's no jump scare. There's something worse, a kind of terrible practicality to it. These aren't monsters. They're people who made a decision. And that's where most viewers would die. Not from being caught by them. From the moment before, when your brain, confronted with something that doesn't fit inside any framework you've ever built, simply stops processing, freezes, locks up. In The Walking Dead, Rick Grimes describes a moment like this, where a man is so paralyzed by what he's seeing that he can't move, can't react, can't function. That freeze response, that's not weakness, that's biology. And in this world, it takes about 4 seconds to kill you. Imagine you and the boy encounter an old man walking the same direction as you on the highway outside what used to be a small Georgia town. Alone, frail, apparently harmless. The boy wants to help him, wants to share what little food you have, wants to treat him like a human being. You hesitate, and here's the problem that world creates at every single turn. Every person you meet could be your death. Not because all people are bad, because you cannot know. And the cost of trusting the wrong person is absolute. You share your food with someone who follows you and attacks while you're sleeping. You mention the direction you're heading to someone who tells a larger group. You drop your guard for 30 seconds with someone who uses those 30 seconds to take your weapon. The world before the collapse spent decades training you to extend good faith, to be open, to treat strangers with basic decency. Those instincts, good instincts, normal instincts, civilized instincts, become lethal vulnerabilities in this world. This is the part of the survival equation that no bug-out bag can fix. No amount of 9mm rounds, no Mossberg 500 in the truck, no prepper pantry addresses this problem because this problem is you, your psychology, your moral framework. The thing that makes you a good person in 2024 is the exact thing that gets you killed on that road. Let's be honest about what actually separates the man from almost everyone you know. It's not physical strength. The film is clear. He's wasting away. It's not weapons expertise. It's not technical survival knowledge. It's one thing: the inability to stop. Sounds simple, it is not. Stopping, physically, means losing body heat faster, means becoming more visible, means giving time for others to find you, means the fragile momentum that keeps a deteriorating body functioning begins to collapse. But stopping psychologically is worse. The man allows himself exactly 0 complete breakdowns. He feels despair. The film doesn't hide that, but he does not stop inside it. He moves through it. One step, then another, then another. You know what that requires? It requires that you have dismantled every psychological coping mechanism that modern American life gave you. Because here's the ugly truth. Every structure in your life right now, your job, your social media, your relationships, your routines, your Netflix queue, your weekend plans, exists to give the present moment meaning, to justify the daily effort with the promise of some future payoff. Your brain runs on that promise. Take it away, completely, permanently, with no visible end, and the brain doesn't heroically adapt. It begins to come apart. Not because you're weak, because you're human, because depression is not a character flaw. It's a biological response to an environment with no reward signal. Because panic isn't cowardice. It's an alarm system calibrated to a world that no longer exists. Near the end of the film, the father is barely functioning. The cough is bringing up blood. He knows what that means. The boy knows what that means, even without the words for it. And they keep moving. Not because there's concrete hope. There is no concrete hope. The coast where they've been heading offers no guarantee of anything. There's no FEMA outpost waiting, no CDC safe zone, no military checkpoint with hot food and a cot. There is only stopping means dying, so we don't stop. The man is operating at the absolute limit of what a human body can sustain before it shuts down permanently. And still, one step at a time, one day at a time. If you've ever driven through the Smoky Mountains in November in the rain with no heat in the car, you have maybe 1% of an idea of what those final miles feel like. 1%. So, why wouldn't you survive? Not because you lack the right gear, not because you don't have enough ammo, not because you didn't take a wilderness survival course. You wouldn't survive because the road doesn't test survival skills. It tests something that 200 years of American civilization, the greatest, most comfortable, most entertainment-saturated civilization in human history, has spent every day training you not to have. This isn't a zombie apocalypse where you can find your people and build a community. This isn't The Walking Dead where there's always another settlement, another enemy, another reason to keep fighting. This isn't Zombieland where the dark comedy keeps you breathing. This is just the road, and the ash and the cold, and the arithmetic of a world running out. Most people, not weak people, not stupid people, most people would quietly come apart in the second week, when the reality that there is no visible end to this begins to land in a way that's not hypothetical anymore. When the emergency alert system has been silent for so long you've stopped checking. When the last can of Campbell's soup is gone and the next town is 20 miles and you don't have 20 miles left in your legs, the silence would do it. The gray would do it. The realization that what you're looking at is not a problem to be solved, it's just the world now. The Road is not a film about what remains after the world ends. It's a film about the one thing that can't be looted, can't be rationed, and can't be found in any prepper's bunker. If you made it to the end of this, drop a comment. What would you do in his place, and what do you think actually ended the world in this film? I'll see you in the next one.